Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. This week's guest is the Grammy-winning rock and roll guitar hero, Steve Lukather. Steve's played on so many hit records, not only for Toto, but for Michael Jackson, Boss Skaggs, and the list just goes on and on. This interview was one of those ones that I just couldn't make one show about. So welcome to part one of Steve Lukather. When we come back, Steve Lukather. So we're back with Steve Lukather.
Hey, man.
Good to see you.
Great to see you, man.
Like we just said, this is 10 years we've known each other now.
It's incredible. I was, 10 years, just in a blink of an eye. And you took me on an amazing private tour of your, I don't even know how to describe this in an adjective, how wonderful this is. The history. I get near, you let me play Elvis's guitar, okay? And that's, it hit me hard. Some of the things that I've seen in here, and some of the people, the famous studio musicians that many of which I know or knew, and others that I deeply admire, and the history. You just get near an instrument of records that are a part of my soul, my DNA. It gives me the chills, man. Because I really know who all those guys are,
Well, you're one of them. You're in there.
Well, it's an honor beyond honors. I'm not worthy. I'm just like, wow. And just to be in here, with all the amazing greats of all time, it's humbling. Really.
What you said was really funny because Dwayne Eddy was in England playing a few months back, and he was with the Kinks with Ray Davies.
Yeah.
Jimmy Page shows up.
Yeah, Jimmy.
And hey, thanks for coming. He goes, "You kidding? Dwayne Eddy is in my DNA." That's a pretty strong statement to say that from Jimmy Page.
Well, it's funny because I know like Jeff Beck, and probably more so than any of those other guys. And many years ago when we were hanging out, he explained how much those early players meant to all the English guitar players. And then the blues guys, the irony of the English guys bringing American blues to the young white people in America, and we didn't even know what it was. I heard blues from the English invasion, and then I found out where they got it from, and I went back to the egg and got into all that.
Yeah, I think my first real introduction was the Animals.
Love the Animals.
Yeah.
One of the first songs I played in one of my bands when I was 9 years old was House of the Rising Sun.
That's the first song that I learned on
the fact that I could do that at 9 years old was like shredding back then. You know what I mean? Nobody, especially a little kid doing it.
Yeah.
And once I could do that, I was hooked. I was hooked. We played it at a birthday party in front of the girls, everybody's like, and I'm going, before money, girls, anything, that was like the buzz of like, I have to do that.
Yeah.
After I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I pointed to George Harrison and go, I want to be that guy. Because the sound, when I heard him, I didn't understand what it was, because it was like aliens landing in the backyard, like the Wizard of Oz. It goes from black and white to color. It went to color when I saw the Beatles, and my life has never been the same since.
I don't think so many musicians that I've been able to talk to because of the museum and before, that's the same story. The Ed Sullivan Show, the Beatles.
There was nothing like
Elvis,
it.
One of the two.
You remember? There was nothing like that. I wasn't good at sports or nothing. I was kind of bullied when I was a kid, and I was a geek and very painfully shy. And this thing hit me, and my parents thought it was kind of cute, so they bought me a Meet the Beatles and a guitar, and I still have that guitar in my room. I should give it to you.
You should, but you did give me one though that I think it means a lot to me. Of course, I love Toto, but you're for those of you who don't know, you're so much more than Toto.
Well, I had a pretty big career as a studio player, but Toto's an extension of our high school band. When we started, like somewhere, I was in a band. Michael Landau was the other guitar player, John Pierce on bass, Carlos Vega on drums, and Jeff Porcaro and David Paich would come, and Steve Porcaro was on keyboards. He was the leader of the band at the time. And that's when my life changed, when I realized the level of musicianship that was needed. Jeff was in Steely Dan when we were in high school, and David Paich was his best friend, and they were playing with Seals and Crofts, and they were starting to do sessions early on. They're very like late teens, early 20s, and I want to be like those guys. I want, they were just like the upper level, and we realized we were studying music, and we realized we got to be that good. Wow, we better get it together quickly.
What was your first session?
Well, I mean, on a real record,
Yeah.
Terrence Boylan, Boona Boylan, who is John Boylan's brother.
Oh, really? I know
And
John.
Jay Winding, who's a great keyboard player. We were very, very close friends at the time. He introduced me, and that was the first record that came out that had my name on it with like Dean Parks and Donald Fagen, and
Whoa.
I mean, I was like, I went and bought the record when it came out, and I looked at that, and it was like a fantasy come true. You know what I mean? And from there, I mean, I was with a group of musicians that were, at that time, and I just got turned on to everybody. I was introduced to everybody. Jeff, Carl, and Carl family, they turned me on to, not turned me on to, they introduced me to so many people, and that sort of morphed into this thing. I was in a really cool rehearsal band with all these guys that went on to be famous musicians. So at that time, LA was a hotbed for opportunity, because it was before the machines. You could get in and be like do demos, you know what I mean, for $25 a tune or whatever it was, and kind of doing this like minor leagues, being in the minor leagues, and you work up to the majors. And there were clubs happening. You can go sit in, you could play. Everybody started to know who you were, and I knew them, and there was a lot of work, so people would recommend you.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a session for a guy named Phil O'Kelsey, which is in Western 3, where the Beach Boys cut.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, I started doing stuff like this. And then I started meeting Jeff introduced me to, Larry Carlton and Rittenauer and Jay Graydon, who's mentored me and is one of my best friends, my oldest son's godfather, Trevor. And, I met David Foster, David Paich, and all that. And from that, and Michael Baird, Lee Sklar, Rit was on one of my first sessions, or I was on one of the first sessions he was on, and we, to this day, I mean, these guys are still close friends of mine. I don't get to see some of them sometimes.
So Toto when did that become a band?
Well, Toto, before there was the name, of course, we were a high school band. I told you some of the guys that were in it, who've all gone on to have great careers. Jeff Porcaro and David Paich did an album with Boz Scaggs called Silk Degrees, and David Hungate was the bass player. And they went on tour, the first leg of the tour, and when they came back, I was just out of high school pretty much, and Jeff Porcaro and Jay Winding and Steve Porcaro, I guess they recommended me, and so I went down, and they just called me on the phone. I didn't even really have to audition, and I went down there, and I was so excited to play. This is like, I wanted to be in that band, and the album was wailing, and it was the tour to be on, and it was like, and it was an amazing. Boz was so kind to me to hire me, and Les Dudek was the guitar player at the time, so I was just the second guitar player. Well, I guess Les and Boz had some words, and Les left, and Boz goes, I guess we need to get another guitar player. And Jeff Porcaro stood up and pointed his stick at me. He goes, you don't need another guitar. Let's play something with this kid, And so it was my moment. I was like sink or swim, And so we called out the song Jump Street, which is interesting because Les played a slide solo on that. And at the time, I mean, I'm not really a slide player per se, especially when you hear somebody like Derek Trucks, who's definitely not a slide player.
Right.
But this was 1977. So I said, you know what? In my mind, I said, I'm not going to try to be anybody but me. I'm just going to give what I got and just go for it. And if they need to hire another guitar player after that, so be it. And I went for it, and it worked. And at the end of it, everybody was like, and Boz went, I guess we don't need another guitar player. And that moment changed my life. And also proved to Jeff and Paich that I had the chops to maybe do this. Well, prior to that, they invited me to come do a track, January 9th, 1977, I'll never forget it. And we cut one track called All Us Boys, which ended up on our second record, but that was my first time I ever recorded with those guys.
But how old were you then?
I was 19. Oh, 18, just turned 19.
That's young to be that good already.
Well, I mean, we started playing, when I was in my first band making money when I was 11. I mean, it was $20 a weekend doing little parties, and we were sort of freakish. We played the teenage fair, but we weren't teenagers. So they gave us an honorary award because the teenagers were pissed off. And it's a real funny story because it was the first time I ever got to play on big amps. They had this wall of acoustic amps, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, literally, they had to put the mic stand all the way down. And I was playing a Jaguar that looked like it looked like a joke because I looked like a little kid holding this monster guitar, and I had a fuzz tone and a wah-wah and all this stuff. And we played some stuff, and people went nuts for it because we were kids and we could actually play.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know where I'm going around the block here with this, but anyway, getting back to the Toto thing. With Boz, I mean, and I got that tour, and Boz kind of made a big deal out of me, like, yeah, I'm 19 years old on guitar, which nowadays there's like shredders at 5 years old, but there wasn't that many of us, me and Landau, and so there was guys around, but it was rare.
Yeah.
And it really, Jeff and Paige said, and Steve, they wanted me to, when I heard they were starting a band, Sony Records, or then Columbia, because the record was so successful, and Paige wrote most of the songs, actually all of them, except for one, and Jeff played drums, and Hungate played bass. There was a core band there, and Columbia had found out, you're starting a band, we want you. And so we sort of had a record deal before anything. And we had done 4 demos prior to that tour. And I was part of that. Every weekend, I go, am I going to get asked back? Am I in? He goes, well, I don't know. We might look at a couple other guys. And then there was a whole bunch. I'd be doing an overdub, and there'd be a whole bunch of the local guys like, who's this kid, man? What is this guy jumping the queue? Like they all thought maybe they were going to get it. But I felt bad. I mean, I wasn't trying to steal anybody's gig. But I guess there was something that they saw in me that I didn't even see in myself.
Yeah.
I'm still terribly insecure, but I wanted this gig so bad that I really feel that the good Lord reached down and said, okay, kid, this is your dream. You get it this time. Maybe I earned it from a past life. I don't know what it was, But it all happened so fast. We were in the studio a month after the end of the summer tour in '77, recording the first Toto album before we had a name. And the rest is the rest.
So for those who don't know, you got the name.
Oh, well, that was fun. I think, I'm going to tell you the truth now, okay? Everybody said, we didn't really want to, first off, I didn't like the name. I thought it was a dumb name. Our high school name was Still Life. I thought, there it is, that's a cool name, No, we need something simple, and they wanted to do something different. And, I was a junior member at the time, so I didn't really have any say. And Jeff and David went out and had some margaritas at Lucy's El Adobe, and they went home and watched The Wizard of Oz. And I think that opened up the idea, and they started writing it on the tape boxes. And I'd be going, Toto? I mean, the music's, it's a little dog in The Wizard of Oz. It means a whole lot of different things around the world, we come to find out. But literally, that's the truth. I think that was the catalyst to them doing that, and it just sort of stuck. And then it became that, and 43 years later, I'm sitting here, and we thought, gosh, wouldn't it be great to get 10 years? Our heroes, the Beatles, got 8. They did everything they did in 8 years, which is tremendous, changed the world. And, of course, we never did that, but in terms of timeline, classic rock wasn't invented then. It was only 8 years after the Beatles broke up. I mean, it was 7 years. I mean, they broke up in 1970, and our band was 7 years later. So everything was still on it's just rock and roll as it wasn't subgenres or anything like that. So we thought, wow, if we got 10 years, wouldn't that be amazing? If we had a hit record, that'd be great. And when we got that, we thought we were off to the races. And then through that, people heard that I was playing with those guys, and I started getting calls for sessions. And I had just started doing that, probably at the end of 76 into 77. And then when I got the Boz gig, everything sort of blew up. Boz, in the middle of the rehearsals, I started doing sessions and stuff like that. I was working on a session, I got a call about 10 o'clock at night, but it was Boz going, can you come over to Hollywood Sound? I want you to do a solo on this tune called The Clue. And that was a life-changing moment too. I went in there, and those are the days when they didn't have lots of tracks. And they were mixing soon. They were set up to mix, but they needed a solo. And Ray Parker Jr. and Jay Graydon had played the guitars on the basic tracks, and I loved those guys. They're my heroes still to this day, and friends. And I set out they were doing something. They said, just wait out in the hall while we do something. We'll call you in when you're ready. So, I had the 335 out, and I was clocking it through the door going, this is the big moment for me. I can't blow this. I can't blow this. And I went in there, and I had a little orange squeezer that Jay Graydon used to use, so I started putting on the 330. It was a little compressor, but it only had one setting. It was on, off. And I had I think it was through a little modded blackface Fender Princeton or something like that. And they played the track, and I did that solo. And it was like, some of it was like almost an otherworldly experience. Like, was I even in the room when I played this thing? And at the end of it, everybody said, "That's great, man." I wanted to make Jeff and Paige proud of me and make it. I really wanted them to ask me to be in their band. That's really where it was at, because I heard rumblings. Right, we're gonna put a band together, and the Boz tour happened. And it just, everything from that just snowballed. And I met all this great studio players. I'd be here all night naming everybody, but you know who they are. And the next thing you know, I started getting, Jay Graydon and Carlton and Rittenauer had moved on to be artists and producers and stuff like that. So there was a hole for me. And I got in.
The Les Paul.
Yeah, well, my Les Paul that's here, the Deluxe, that's a story, man. It's in my book, but I will tell you. I mean, from the time I was 7 years old to the time, that my father bought that guitar for me when I was an early teenager, I had crap guitars. They were just thrifty drugstore broken guitars, which ironically now people covet.
Yeah.
At the time, it was a crappy guitar.
Yeah.
But, and one of my idiot friends knocked it over and broke the neck. Not off, but screwed up the headstock to the point where it wouldn't tune up very well. But I had to play that. My dad goes, "You broke it. You're not going to get a new one. You broke it." Mm-hmm. And somehow I'd always borrow guitars. And kids would have great guitars that couldn't really play very well. I go, "Can I borrow your guitar for this gig or for this weekend or something like that?" So I scammed guitars off people, but I didn't really own one. The long story short, instead of going to the toy store, I went to the Guitar Center in Hollywood. On at least once every couple of weeks. That's, get a ride down there. Just try. It was like going to the Formula One. They let you drive the cars, but you can't buy one. You can't really. I couldn't afford one, obviously. And my dad had come back. He was in the film business, television film. He'd come back off the road. Let's go hang out. What do you want to do? And I said, "Can we go to Guitar Center and hang out? I just love to play the guitars." He goes, "Yeah, we'll go down there." He says, "Maybe we'll buy an amp. We'll see what's going on." So I was like, wow, I might get something, and I didn't want to push it. My dad worked hard, and he knew how much I loved it. When I used to get in trouble, they didn't punish me. They'd take stuff away, music stuff away, stereo or whatever. You can't. No, it's my life. Anyway, I go in there, and he goes, "I want to try out this VT22 Ampeg, like the one Keith used on Exile on Main Street." So there was a practice room in there, so they put me in there. And he goes, "Grab a guitar." So I grabbed the Les Paul Deluxe, which is here, and I put it in the room, and I started, and I cranked up the amp, and I started ripping on it, and I was just a little kid, So people are going, "Who's that playing?" They open the door, and they see like this little deal. "Well, who's playing?" I go, "No, it's actually me," and I'm sitting there. So I was ripping it, and my dad was going like this, and I had a friend of mine with me, and I said, "Wow, that was really cool, Dad. Thanks for taking me down." Well, my dad had walked out of the room, and I was just in there shredding him, and not shredding, but just playing whatever I knew. I was pretty good for my age, I guess. And my dad came back and he goes, "All right, man, let's get out of here." And I go, "Okay, man, let's go." He goes, "Let's get this stuff in the car." And I went, "What do you mean?" He goes, "The stuff, the guitar, the amp." I went, "What do you mean?" He goes, "It's yours." I'm gonna start crying now.
That's fantastic.
Huge moment. Huge.
Yeah.
My father gave up getting a new car and all stuff for me.
Yeah. That's.
My mom was like, "You better be nice to your father. He gave up stuff for you."
Yeah.
I love my parents. I love them so much. And my dad sacrificed that for me. And that changed my life. I got this great guitar.
Yeah.
I think I woke up in the middle of the night to, polish it. You know what I mean? The smell of the case.
Yeah.
It was just, it changed my life.
Yeah.
And then it really had pro gear. And then he goes, "Yeah, but you're going to start taking lessons, learn how to read and all this stuff," which I was like, okay, whatever it takes, which was also the most incredible piece of advice. And I studied with a wonderful man named Jimmy Weibel, who was a jazz guy who, and he took me my raw purse. He goes, I kind of went and auditioned for him, and he saw that I could play. He goes, wow, you got all that rock stuff together pretty good. He goes, but in order to do it right, you have to learn how to read music.
Yeah.
And he was so patient. And I wasn't a great student because I had a really good ear. So the notes were, and plus I'm partially dyslexic, so which I didn't know at the time. I'm always like looking at stuff sideways. Not as bad to write everything backwards, but I have a little taste of it.
You know what? They say that's a gift to a lot of people.
Yeah, it depends. Like a gift. At the time, I didn't realize it was hard though. So if you could play like this, you didn't want to go down, down, down.
Right.
Every good boy does find F, ace, and all the tricks that you learn.
Well, you know what Chet said? Somebody said, Chet, do you know how to read music? He goes, not enough to hurt me,
Yeah.
So.
Well, it was one of these kind of things. I really worked hard at it, but every time I come back, I learn it. And then he put another piece of music at the same level. And I'd be struggling. He goes, you're using your ear. Stop using your ear. You have to read the notes. So he'd get mad at me. And not mean mad, but like frustrated. Like, come on, man. You're paying for these lessons. Let's learn something. So, I immersed myself in it. And then I immersed myself in every music class that there was in school, which I really can't tell you enough. We need music in schools.
No kidding. I agree with that.
You know what I mean? It's good for everything. It's good for everything in your life. It's good for your soul.
On that very good note, let me take a break and we'll be right back.
The Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum has been celebrating the men and women who make the music of our lives since 2006. The Musicians Hall of Fame is the one and only museum in the world that honors the talented musicians who played on the greatest recordings of all time.
It's a music city, huh? It's, where else are you going to get the cats, all the cats that are in this room?
The Grammy Museum Gallery at the Musicians Hall of Fame is an interactive facility that allows guests to explore the process of making a recording. Take drum lessons with Ringo Starr. Sing on stage with Ray Charles. Write a song with Desmond Child. Rap with Nelly. Or be Garth Brooks in our recording studio experience. Located in the heart of downtown Nashville, in the first floor of the historic Nashville Municipal Auditorium. Come see what you've heard at the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum.
Hi, I'm Tyler Rudesheim, Director of Events at the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum. Located within the historic Nashville Municipal Auditorium, the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum is one of the most unique spaces in downtown Nashville, offering a versatile environment that caters to events of all sizes. Your guests will love this truly Nashville experience. We specialize in corporate dinners, music industry events, receptions, and more. Contact me today to book your next event.
Welcome back to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage with Steve Lukather. So let's jump back to when we're talking about, I so believe in what you said, we really need music back into schools, and it.
I learned more. Let me just interrupt you and tell you that, while I was in my early studies, we took harmony theory, sight singing, piano, and that was, I used to cut school and come back for those classes. I paid my sister to do my homework because I was working. I didn't want to, and I purposely failed an aptitude test so I can be in the idiot class and not have to think. I knew what I wanted to do when I was a little kid. That's real. I wasn't going to be a doctor and a lawyer. I was either going to make it or not. It was like I was going to make it or I was going to be going, you want fries with that for the rest of my life? You know what I mean? There was very little in between that I knew how to do. But I will tell you that every kid should have a really job, and I had a couple. I used to have to clean the toxic solvents out of a dry cleaner. The guy wouldn't even give me gloves. I was a long-haired guy. He hated me, making $1.65 an hour, treating me like crap, and making fun of my dream. And and if you have a really terrible job, it's very motivating. My other terrible job was bussing tables and washing dishes at a Japanese restaurant before Japanese restaurants were cool at all. Only Japanese people, and I was a white boy. So they kind of thought that was kind of funny. Let's have this kid wipe it. And my hands, and having chops, having to wash dishes, even with the gloves, it would get wet, and I'd, chlorine smell. My friends would make fun of that for weird reasons I won't mention right now. And you know, it was very motivating. And then me and Michael Landau and myself, John Pierce, we got a job parking cars at Chasen's restaurant, which was in Beverly Hills, for really wealthy people. So I got to drive Ferraris and all this stuff, and we were idiots. Like, you know, don't be careful when you give your car keys to somebody, because we just would drive these cars. It was like the movie, was it Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where they get the Ferrari and they're going 1,000 miles an hour, put like 500 miles on, then give the guy the keys. That's a much more extreme version, but we were idiots, you know, we were punk ass kids, and so it was just all these things were like, but all we did in school was play, and Steve Lukather had this unbelievable band, Still Life, and we rehearsed every day after school, and then we would go to the Dick Grove Music School and study music there, and I was studying privately. Everybody went like this. I studied orchestration and all this stuff. I wanted to learn. I really wanted this badly. You know, I've never been a great sight reader. I could bullshit my way through any chart. And I learned enough to be able to do records and stuff, and enough notes that if I saw something, okay, or I could figure it out real quick. Or I would come up with a better part that was written that saved my ass.
Yeah. I think that you and Chet had that in common. You didn't learn enough to hurt you, for sure.
I learned enough to save me, but not enough to, like, you know, be on movie dates.
Yeah.
Because I got some funny days. Rittenhour saved me once early on in my session time. We were doing a session for Gene Page, and it was one of those things, you know, and it was a live session, so there was like full orchestra and everything, and I was new, and I showed up a little bit late because my car, I got a flat tire, for real. Not like one of these, the dog ate my homework things. It was really for real, and I was panic struck because I was trying to make an impression in town, and that's a bad impression to be late on a full orchestra date. So I managed to get there just barely in time, and Gene Page was famous for 2 takes next. He expected you to be able to, and so I figured, you know, this would probably be cool, you know, it's funk. I mean, come on, I can do this. So I get there, I'm late, I'm sitting next to, and Rittenhour was there, and we had just done 2 weeks worth of sessions for the first time we met, and he took a little shine to me, I guess. And I was in awe of him. And I sat next to him, and there's guitar 1 and guitar 2. You know, there was always the pecking. Of course, Lee was in guitar 1, and they left me the charts for guitar 2. And it was like, you know, okay, M35 or whatever it was, we're gonna do this take. It was for television or something. And I got it out, and I was just struggling to plug into my amp, getting tuned and all that stuff. And Rick's going, relax, man, this is gonna be cool. And I look at my chart, and it's the piano part in D flat with no chord symbols anywhere. And I looked over at Rick's chart, and I was like, tacit, fill, you know, it was like just the easy. And I turned and I looked at Rick, and I must have had a look on my face like I saw my grandfather bend over in the shower. I mean, all the color left, and they were counting. And Gene goes, all right, let's make one. I didn't know we were run through nothing. And it was like 1, 2. Rick grabbed my chart, his chart in front of mine, and he started the tune. And I'm like, I had a moment to breathe, and I looked at him, and I might have had a tear come out of my eye. This man saved me, because there was too many people there. If I'd have choked, bad news travels fast.
Yeah.
They'd rather kill you than anoint you.
Yeah.
And he saved me. That was a moment. I tell the story, and I kiss him to this day, 43 years later, and go, man, you saved me. You could have let me drown, man. Could have easily taken the competition. Another guitar player? Let's lose him.
I'm sure you passed the favor on to somebody.
I have, but not necessarily that way, but you passed the favor.
Yeah. We hope you've enjoyed part 1 of Steve Lukather. Be sure to catch us next time on Steve Lukather Part 2, Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage.